Hey, I didn't spill coffee.
That is a relief. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time zone you're tuning in from. I'm Sunny.
And I'm Joe. Welcome back to Sip&Talk, everyone. Glad to have you with us.
You know, I actually had a moment this morning with the coffee machine just outside the studio. It kind of taught me a lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't tell me it exploded.
It might as well have. I pressed the button, you know, the big one that says latte, and I'm expecting, well, coffee.
A reasonable expectation.
You'd think. Instead, it just shot out this huge, violent burst of steam and hot water. It completely missed me, thankfully, but as I was drying myself off, I just had this thought.
What's that?
Isn't that exactly what high-stakes decision-making feels like sometimes? You do this one simple, clean action, you press the button, but the mechanics underneath are just pure, unexpected chaos.
So you're saying your morning coffee accident made you think about, what, the failure of linear systems?
Exactly.
I bet that machine's internal feedback loop was something like, the more you rush and jam that button, the faster the whole system just guarantees a total collapse.
That's it. That's precisely it. I realize something we all forget. We assume the world is this simple machine where, you know, you put in effort, you get a predictable result.
Oh, it needs to be.
Right. A simple microwave. You press the button, you get a hot meal. But the world, especially the strategic world, isn't a microwave at all.
It's what then?
It's that piece of IKEA furniture. You know the one. You're halfway through building it, the instructions make no sense, and suddenly you have 3 extra screws, and you start questioning every single life choice that led you to that moment.
I have absolutely been there. And that feeling, that structural messiness, is a perfect setup for what we're getting into today with Sip and Talk. We've been looking at a ton of material focused on strategic foresight, on these complexity frameworks, and maybe most importantly, the behavioral side of things.
Yeah, how to actually translate a brilliant idea into something that actually gets done.
So our mission for all you Sip and Talkers today is pretty clear. We're going to try to understand these nonlinear dynamics. We're going to map out some of those chaotic feedback loops you were talking about.
And we'll get into probabilistic forecasting, so moving away from just gut feelings and toward, actual calibrated certainties. And the big one.
How to keep things from just stalling out.
Which is the biggest killer of great ideas, right? Execution stall.
It really is. And we promise we're going to use super everyday, relatable examples. Because whether you're, running a huge company or just trying to figure out your own personal finances.
The mistakes are the same, the underlying cognitive errors, the system errors, they're universal.
Exactly. We're giving you the mental models to manage all that modern complexity.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Why does everything in strategy just feel so much harder now than it did, say, 20 years ago?
That's a great question, and I think the common answer is, we don't have enough data. But that's not it at all, is it?
No, not at all. Everyone is drowning in data. We have more data than we know what to do with. The real problem, from what we've been reading, is this clash between two things. On one hand, you have the sheer objective complexity of our interconnected world.
Right.
And on the other, you have our brains, which have, let's be honest, pretty limited capacity to process all that nonlinearity.
We're using old hardware for new software.
Perfectly put. Strategic failures, so often they come down to us using these comfortable, intuitive, A plus B equals C mental models on systems that are they're not built like that. They're fundamentally dynamic.
It's like trying to use a ruler to measure a hurricane.
Yes. The tool is just wrong for the job. The system isn't designed for that kind of predictable input-output thing.
Which brings us to this idea of moving beyond linear causality. Linear causality is what we expect, right? If I push twice as hard, I should get twice the result.
It's how our brains are wired. But in a complex system, the link between cause and effect it's rarely that simple. It's often really disproportionate.
What do you mean by disproportionate?
Well, a tiny little input can cause a massive, massive output. Or you could have the opposite, right? A huge effort that results in almost nothing.
Okay.
It's also lagged. So the real consequence of what you do today might not show up for, 6 months. And the big one is that it's subject to these sudden exponential accelerations or just total collapse.
This sounds a lot like the danger of extrapolation. In business planning, everyone just draws a line.
Oh, the trend line. My favorite.
Right. You just take last quarter's growth and you just extend it into the future with a ruler.
It's probably the single highest risk thing you can do in strategy because nonlinearity basically guarantees that assumption is going to break. And it's going to break at the absolute worst possible moment.
It feels so safe.
It's comforting. Our brains just crave that story of like slow, steady, gradual change. But complex systems don't work like that. They absorb stress, they absorb pressure internally, you don't see it, and then boom.
They hit a tipping point.
A tipping point, which, you knew this was coming, brings us to the ramen analogy.
The ramen analogy. I'm ready.
Okay, so you put a pot of water on the stove to boil. The linear expectation, the comfortable story is that it'll get warm slowly.
A few little bubbles.
Then a few more bubbles, and then it'll gently, gracefully transition into a rolling boil. A smooth curve.
Makes sense. But that's not what happens, is it?
Never. Not if you've ever actually tried to boil water while, answering one quick email or scrolling on your phone for just a minute.
Exactly.
It looks fine. It looks totally stable. Nothing's happening. It looks fine, looks fine, looks fine. And then, all at once, you hit that phase change.
And it's everywhere.
It's instantaneous. The whole pot just explodes into this frantic, chaotic, sticky mess all over your stovetop.
That sudden shift.
Okay.
From looking totally fine one second to complete chaos the next. That is what our strategic environment feels like.
It's how markets crash. It's how some new technology suddenly crosses that chasm and becomes mainstream. You can't predict exactly when the water will boil over, only that the pressure is building toward that point.
So the big takeaway here is that if you're a leader who's just counting on things to slowly evolve, you're going to get burned.
You're guaranteed to miss the exponential upside, or, way more dangerously, the catastrophic collapse on the downside. You have to change your thinking from static snapshots like, where is the market right now, to dynamic interactions.
So not what, but how. How is the pressure building? How is the system itself changing its own rules?
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so if that wasn't hard enough, there's this other problem, right? The fact that we can't even see the whole system in the first place.
Oh, yes. The fragmented perception problem. This is where that old parable of the blind men and the elephant becomes, frankly, terrifyingly relevant for anyone in a leadership position.
I know this one. A bunch of blind men are all touching a different part of an elephant.
Yep. One touches the leg and says, oh, it's a tree trunk. Another one touches the tail and says, it's a rope.
And the key is that they're all technically right, aren't they? Their data is accurate for their little piece.
Their data is perfect, but their conclusion about the whole system is completely fundamentally wrong.
And you see this in corporations every single day.
No, every day. Think about a big product launch that fails. The head of engineering, they're only seeing the system through the lens of code and timelines. That's their inside view.
They're touching the leg of the elephant.
Right. And then you have the marketing lead. They're looking at consumer sentiment data, ad spend. They're touching, I don't know, the elephant's ear. And then legal is over here worried about regulatory risk.
And they're all operating in their own little silos, applying their simple linear logic. Engineering is like, if we ship this feature, the product will be done.
And marketing is saying, if we just double the ad spend, sales will double. But they are all missing the whole picture.
They don't see how the different parts are interacting.
They don't see that the aggressive push from engineering is, I don't know, creating some regulatory problem that legal is worried about, which then triggers a huge backlash on social media when it launches, which completely wipes out any benefit from that ad spend.
So their individual data points were true, but their map of the territory was totally wrong.
Dangerously wrong, which is why the solution has to be, well, it has to be mandatory cross-functional synthesis. You have to force everyone into a room to share their piece of the elephant.
You have to build the whole picture, the outside view.
You have to. Let's make it personal. Think about a complicated breakup with a friend. If you only talk to your one friend who was always kind of jealous of them, what are you going to hear?
Only the bad stuff.
Oh.
That they're a total jerk. You're touching the sharp tusk.
Right. But if you talk to another friend who only knew them in a professional setting, they might say, oh, they were so patient and generous. They're touching the soft, floppy ear.
So you can't just rely on one biased opinion. You have to synthesize all of it to see the whole person, the whole elephant.
You have to see the context. Otherwise, you're just making decisions in the dark.
Okay, so if we can't look at static data, and we can't look at siloed data, we have to look at how the system moves. We have to find these feedback loops.
That's the engine room. That's what's actually driving the change. And understanding the loops tells you everything about the speed you need to operate at.
So we're moving from asking, what is the market doing, to what's the mechanism making the market move?
Exactly. And there are really two big types of loops. And figuring out which one you're in tells you whether you need to sprint for your life or if you need to settle in for a long, grinding war.
Yeah, let's start with the sprint, the reinforcing loop, the accelerator.
Yeah, these are the explosive ones. They amplify change in one direction, so they accelerate growth or they accelerate collapse exponentially.
It's a self-feeding cycle.
The classic example is, network effects on a social media platform. The more people that join, the more valuable it is for new people to join, which pulls in more people,
Making it even more valuable, and on it goes.
It's a positive, self-fulfilling prophecy, but it works on the downside too. Think of a financial panic. Fear causes selling, which pushes the price down, which causes more fear.
And more selling. A death spiral.
So when your analysis shows that one of these reinforcing loops is kicking in, like a product going viral or a reputational crisis starting, you do not have the luxury of time.
You have to act immediately.
The mandate is immediate, high-velocity deployment. You have to throw everything at it to either capitalize on that tiny exponential window or to stop the bleeding. If you hesitate, the loop runs away from you and the opportunity is just gone.
Speed is everything.
Everything. And the most common, the most destructive reinforcing loop in our own lives has to be procrastination.
Oh boy, I know this one well. The engine of self-sabotage.
We all do. And it works because the task itself, let's say it's writing a really difficult report, it triggers negative emotions, anxiety, frustration, dread. And your brain, it's just wired to fix your mood right now. It wants short-term relief.
So the loop goes like this.
Yeah.
The task feels hard, so you feel nervous. The more nervous you get.
The more you avoid it and you go scroll on your phone, you're looking for that little dopamine hit to feel better now.
But while you're scrolling, the clock is ticking. It's getting later. The deadline is getting closer.
Which makes the fear and anxiety even worse, which then triggers even more avoidance.
It's a vicious cycle. You're literally pouring gasoline on the fire.
You are. And the longer you wait, the bigger and scarier the task seems, which just confirms your original fear that it was too hard to begin with. It's a perfect self-reinforcing prep.
So if you spot one of these loops in a strategy, you have to break it with force. Or if it's a good one, you have to jump on it with everything you've got.
Before it disappears.
Yeah.
Now, the opposite of that is the balancing loop. This is the system's resistor.
The resistor. So this is the one that fights you.
It fights change. It seeks equilibrium. It's always trying to pull things back to the status quo.
You see this all the time. You try to launch some big new software project in a company.
And what happens? People resist. The training is too hard. Managers quietly go back to the old way of doing things. The comfortable old habits just reassert themselves.
The system is fighting to stay the same.
It's called dynamic equilibrium. The system has these built-in buffers and counter-reactions. In our own lives, the classic example is dieting.
Oh, this is a painful one.
It is. You go to the gym, you cut calories, you lose 10 pounds. Great. You've pushed the system away from its equilibrium.
But then
Your body, which is this incredibly complex system that's optimized for survival, it senses that weight loss as a threat.
it thinks you're starving.
It basically does. So it slows down your metabolism, it cranks up your hunger hormones, it makes you feel tired and cold. It is working so hard to get back to its original weight.
And often it succeeds. The weight comes right back on.
The system snaps back. So the strategy here is totally different. You can't just attack it with speed. You have to use persistence. You have to systematically, slowly reduce that friction over time.
You have to outlast the system's desire to go back to normal.
You chip away at it knowing it's going to push back until you can establish a new, stable equilibrium.
And this all means we have to talk about unintended consequences. Because if the system is this complex and interconnected,
They're not just possible, they are guaranteed.
you can't avoid them.
No, the job of a strategist isn't to prevent all unintended consequences. That's a fantasy. The job is to proactively search for them.
So not just the first order effect.
No, you have to go deeper. Okay, if we launch this product, the obvious result is more sales. Great. What's the secondary effect? Maybe more waste in our supply chain. Okay. What's the tertiary effect? Maybe that waste attracts regulatory scrutiny, which triggers a balancing loop that slows us down.
You have to think 2-3 steps ahead.
You have to actively hunt for the non-obvious problems before they find you. Okay, so we've established the world as this non-linear, loopy, fragmented place. So how do we actually equip our brains, which are, built for simplicity, to even deal with that?
We need a better toolkit.
We need an explicit cognitive infrastructure, a set of mental models to help us structure these messy problems and, stop us from just getting paralyzed by the complexity of it all.
So we're moving from mapping the chaos outside to creating some order inside our own heads.
And a huge part of that is starting to speak the right language. And the language of complexity is probability. We have to stop using vague words like, oh, this will probably work.
And start assigning numbers, putting a weight on our decision.
Exactly. These models are like the scaffolding. They help you bridge that gap from this abstract, scary complexity to an actionable, quantifiable decision.
Okay, so let's get into the first model. Inversion. This one it's kind of counterintuitive.
It's thinking backward. Instead of focusing only on how do we succeed, you spend a lot of rigorous energy on the question, how could we totally, completely, embarrassingly fail?
It's not about being pessimistic, though.
No, it's about building a preemptive shield. By listing all the ways you could fail, you can build defenses against those specific failures. It forces you to name your vulnerabilities, to look at your weaknesses, to admit that, yeah, procrastination could absolutely derail this whole thing.
It's a great way to fight that optimism bias that infects almost every strategic plan.
It really is. If you ask a team, how will we succeed? Everyone talks about their strengths. But if you ask, how will we fail in the most public way possible? Suddenly people get very honest about their real weaknesses.
Let's use a simple example. Getting to work on time.
Okay. The positive goal is, how do I get to work on time? The answer is usually something vague, like be more organized, not helpful.
Right. But if you invert it, if you ask, how can I absolutely guarantee that I'll be late for work today?
The failure paths just snap into crystal clear focus, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Hit the snooze button 3 times.
Spend 20 minutes on social media before you even get out of bed.
Leave a dirty dish in the sink that you have to wash right when you should be walking out the door.
Ignore the traffic report because you assume it'll be fine.
And once you know that's the path to failure, you can actively block it. You put your alarm clock across the room, you delete the apps off your phone at night.
And here's the critical connection. Inversion forces you to identify that a behavior like delay or procrastination is a critical failure mode for the strategy.
It's not just a personal failing, it's a strategic risk.
Exactly. And if your inversion analysis shows that delay is your biggest vulnerability, that's the reason projects fail, well, now you have a rigorous, logical reason to deploy those external commitment mechanisms we talked about. You're not doing it because you feel motivated. You're doing it defensively because your risk analysis proved you had to.
That's powerful. Okay, model 2, systems thinking. This is the cure for the blind men and the elephant problem.
It is. It forces us to stop looking at isolated events, that one bad data point, that one dip in sales, and start looking at the underlying web of interdependencies.
Seeing the whole system, not just one piece of it.
Right. And when you combine this with the loop analysis, that's where you find the strategic gold. You find those high-leverage intervention points.
Where a small, targeted push creates a huge, disproportionate result.
You're solving the problem at the structural level, not just treating the symptom.
Use that classic example of the afternoon slump at work.
Okay. The isolated event is, I suddenly need a giant sugary coffee.
So you treat the symptom. You go get the bubble tea. You get a huge sugar spike. And then you crash even harder an hour later.
You do. But systems thinking forces you to look at the whole dynamic flow that led to that craving. What's the real system?
Maybe it's stress from a morning meeting.
Which led you to skip lunch, which caused your blood sugar to crash.
Which then triggers a primal need for comfort food to fix your mood and energy levels.
The craving for the bubble tea is just the very end of that long chain reaction. If you intervene there, at the event level, we're just stuck in the cycle.
But if you intervene at the system level,
you manage the stress differently, you eat a proper lunch with protein, you take a 10-minute walk, you fix the underlying dynamic flow, and the craving never even shows up. You've structurally eliminated the problem.
Okay, that makes sense. Which leads us to the third model, root cause analysis, or RCA.
But it needs an upgrade for this complex world. In a simple linear system, a root cause is usually a broken part. A gear stripped, a line of code had a bug.
Easy to find, easy to fix.
But in a nonlinear system, the root cause is rarely that simple. It's usually some unanticipated interaction between different parts or a feedback loop that nobody saw coming.
So traditional RCA stops too early.
Yeah.
It just identifies the symptom.
Exactly. When a big strategy fails, you have to use RCA to diagnose not just the broken component, but the flawed systemic structure or the cognitive biases that let it happen in the first place.
So let's imagine a big company that keeps missing its quarterly launch targets. It's costing them a fortune.
The superficial symptomatic observation is the engineering teams are slow, or the project manager isn't tough enough.
And if you stop there, you fire the project manager. You're just punishing the person.
But if you do a real complexity-aware RCA, you might trace it back and find the true root cause is structural. Maybe the integration tools between the U.S. and European engineering teams were never standardized.
So it's a systems problem.
It's a systems problem. Every single quarter, both teams are wasting 3 weeks manually rebuilding interfaces. It has nothing to do with willpower or motivation. It's a failure of architectural design.
So cracking the whip on the engineers is just treating the symptom. It's exhausting and it won't work.
But fixing the structure-mandating standardized tools solves the problem forever. So RCA has to be a check on our own thinking. Did we suffer from bias? Did we miss a reinforcing loop? It's about diagnosing the design of our strategy, not just the outcome. All right, so if the mental models are our toolbox, then prediction needs to be our precision instrument. We have to start treating it like a measurable professional skill, not just an art form.
Which means we have to kill all the vague language. No more likely possible. I have a good feeling about this.
That ambiguity is where bad decisions hide. It just masks uncertainty. We have to replace that subjective confidence with objective, measurable probabilities.
So instead of this will probably work, it needs to be there is an 80% likelihood of X occurring in the next 18 months.
Yes, because that's a statement you can test. You can go back later and see if you were right. You can't improve your decision-making if you can't measure your own accuracy.
And the starting point for all of this is the base rate, the outside view.
Always. The base rate is just the statistical reality, is how often similar things have happened in the past. It's your anchor to objectivity.
And it's so important because it's the ultimate defense against getting lost in the inside view.
The inside view is your own vivid, specific story. It's your brilliant team, your unique market position, your excitement. It's the blind man touching his one part of the elephant and thinking he knows everything.
And the temptation to believe your own story it's huge. You're leading a new project, you feel the momentum, and you think, this is different. The failure rate of past projects doesn't apply to us.
That is the base rate fallacy in action right there. History matters. If 95% of similar, super ambitious products have failed in the past, your starting prediction for success has to be near 5%, period, no matter how special you feel.
You use the outside view to ground your inside view.
You have to. And these predictions can't be static, right? They have to evolve as you get new information.
Which is where Bayesian updating comes in.
A fancy term for a simple idea. You start with your base rate. That's your prior probability. Then, as new solid evidence comes in, maybe a competitor folds or you hit a huge technical milestone, you methodically adjust your initial number.
So you move from the prior probability to the posterior probability.
It's just a disciplined way of updating your forecasts as the world changes, which in a nonlinear world is always.
Okay, so this next part this is the ego check. Calibration.
This is the big one. Calibration is simply measuring whether your stated confidence level matches your actual accuracy over time.
It's cognitive accountability.
It really is. If you keep telling the board you're 90% confident about things that only happen 60% of the time, you are fundamentally miscalibrated. You're not just wrong, you're systematically distorting your organization's whole perception of risk.
And the most common form of this is overconfidence. Why is that so dangerous?
Because it makes you lazy. If you are systematically underestimating risk and overestimating your chance of success, you feel less urgency to prepare.
Why would you bother with an expensive contingency plan if you're 90% sure you're going to win?
Exactly. Why would you impose a painful deadline? It seems unnecessary. Your own false precision makes you strategically fragile.
This reminds me of the friend who is always 10 minutes away.
Yes. Perfect example. When they text you, I'll be home in 10 minutes, you don't actually believe that with 100% certainty, do you?
No way. I'm running my own internal calibrated probability model based on all the other times they've said that.
Of course you are. For friend A, you're thinking, okay, 30% chance of 10 minutes, 80% chance it's actually 45 minutes. For friend B, who is always on time, you might actually believe them.
We're constantly, subconsciously tracking and scoring the predictions of people in our lives.
So we just need to make that a formal process in our organizations. Calibration tracking needs to be a KPI for leaders. Your ability to forecast accurately should be treated like a measurable asset that can be improved.
But even with all these systems, our brains still have these built-in glitches, these biases.
They do, and we need explicit strategies to fight them.
First up is the big one, confirmation bias. We just love to find evidence that proves we were right all along.
And we conveniently ignore everything that suggests we might be wrong. So the countermeasure has to be what's called active hypothesis falsification.
You have to actively try to prove yourself wrong.
You institutionalize it. You create a red team, a dedicated group whose only job is to poke holes in the strategy, to find all the evidence that you're wrong. If you can't find a good reason why your plan will fail, it just means you haven't looked hard enough.
Next up, base rate neglect. We already touched on this. Ignoring the boring statistics in favor of one vivid, exciting story.
The anecdote that feels so true. To counter this, you just make base rate review a mandatory part of every single planning meeting. You force the team to start with the objective reality before they get into their own exciting story.
And finally, the linear causality bias. Assuming simple cause and effect when we know the system is complex.
The counter here is just to mandate systems thinking. You force the team to do scenario planning for the crazy exponential outcomes, not just the comfortable linear ones. Ask, what if this reinforcing loop takes off 10 times faster than we thought? Force yourself to model the chaos. Okay, and this brings us to the great Achilles heel of all strategy.
Execution.
Execution. You can have the most brilliant, calibrated, non-linear strategy in the world. You've mapped the loops, you've inverted the problem, you've got your 80% certainty. But if you fail to actually translate that insight into action,
it's all completely worthless. And the thing that kills more good strategies than any bad idea is procrastination.
It is. But we have to update how we think about procrastination. It's not about being lazy.
No, it's not a character flaw.
It's a really sophisticated failure of self-regulation, and it's driven by one thing: the need for short-term mood repair.
We're avoiding a bad feeling.
We are avoiding the immediate anxiety or the frustration or the self-doubt that comes with starting a really hard, cognitively demanding task. We put the task off to make ourselves feel better right now, even though we know we're just creating way more pain for ourselves later.
And all the stuff we've been talking about, managing complexity, doing inversion, which is basically focusing on failure, dealing with probabilities. These are all really hard on the brain.
They're super high in cognitive load and emotional ambiguity. So that emotional friction to just get started is huge. It's so much easier to defer the hard strategic work and go, polish a spreadsheet you already finished.
So relying on willpower is just, it's a terrible strategy.
It's a fragile, high-risk strategy. The solution has to be external. It has to be behavioral.
So if we can't rely on willpower, we have to basically weaponize our own human nature against itself.
And the ultimate weapon is the strategic deployment of active deadlines.
Manufacturing deadlines.
Deliberately manufacturing them. We're exploiting our own tendency to only focus and apply energy when there's external time pressure. But they can't be fake deadlines.
Right. They have to have real consequences.
They have to impose a real, undeniable psychological or organizational cost for not hitting them.
So you're shifting from, I should probably do this, to some kind of external force.
Like public accountability. That's a huge one. Announce the deadline publicly. If you miss it, the social cost, the embarrassment, the reputational hit is immediate, and it is painful.
Okay, what's another one?
You can weaponize the sunk cost fallacy. Let's say you allocate $50,000 of specialized computing time for a project, but you mandate that it expires at the end of this week.
So the team will work like crazy to avoid losing that investment.
The pain of losing the sunk cost becomes greater than the pain of starting the hard task. It flips the emotional calculus.
This is the room cleaning scenario.
It's the perfect illustration. You look at your messy room, you feel that dread, and you procrastinate forever. Because the pain of starting is right now, and the reward of a clean room is some abstract future thing.
But the second a friend texts you, hey, I'm coming over in 10 minutes.
What happens? You achieve a level of organization you didn't think was possible in 8 minutes flat.
The task doesn't get any easier.
No, but the external pressure, the active manufactured deadline from your friend's text, the immediate social cost of shame and embarrassment is now way more painful than the friction of starting to clean. The system flips and forces you to act.
And that's the mechanism we have to build into our strategies. We have to use these commitment devices as standard practice.
And beyond that, we need a better goal architecture. These vague, high-level aspirations like we will conquer the market are useless.
They have to be transformed into concrete, actionable, operational goals.
And those goals need to be interlocked. So progress in one area automatically creates an unavoidable deadline for the next area. It creates this perpetual momentum.
So if marketing needs something from legal by Tuesday to get their press release out,
that Tuesday deadline for legal is now non-negotiable. Because if they fail, they are visibly derailing another expensive downstream process. Everyone is held accountable by the system itself.
And this is how we make sure we actually do the defensive stuff from our inversion analysis.
Exactly. Those vulnerabilities you identified, they can't just sit on a risk document somewhere. They have to be turned into mandatory, time-bound tasks within that goal structure.
So the risk of delayed compliance checks becomes the task: complete Phase 1 compliance review with the external auditor by this Friday.
You are structurally ensuring that defense gets executed instead of just deferred forever, which is what usually happens. So when you put it all together, you realize that true strategic expertise isn't just about having brilliant ideas. It's about unifying all this theoretical rigor with behavioral action. It has to be a seamless, self-improving loop.
We've talked about these 4 huge pillars today: complexity mapping, cognitive modeling, foresight, and execution. And they can't be separate things. They have to work together as one resilient ecosystem.
Let's just quickly review how they fit together to close that loop.
Okay, so you start with pillar 1, complexity mapping. This is where you're defining the reality of the situation. You're mapping the feedback loops. You're trying to figure out where the boiling ramen might erupt.
You're defining the elephant. Then you move to pillar 2, cognitive modeling. You apply those mental models, like inversion or systems thinking, to structure your analysis of that reality. You're moving from just chaotic observation to asking a structured, focused question.
Then pillar 3, probabilistic foresight. This is where you quantify all that uncertainty. You use the base rates, you calibrate your judgment, and you end up with that crucial forecast, the 80% likelihood of X. That tells you where to put your resources.
And finally, pillar 4, behavioral execution. You deploy the active deadlines, the commitment mechanisms to weaponize human nature and make sure that brilliant plan actually gets deployed at the speed it needs to.
And the most important part is the feedback that closes the loop. Every time you execute, you have to track the results.
You have to. Were you well calibrated? Did your 80% prediction actually happen? You do a root cause analysis on the failures, and you feed all that learning right back into the beginning of the model.
So it's a true learning organization.
It is. I mean, think about the simplest version of this loop in your own daily life. You check the traffic report, that's complexity mapping. You use inversion. How do I guarantee I'm late? That's your cognitive model.
You predict it'll take 45 minutes with 70% certainty.
Yeah.
That's your forecast.
You leave 10 minutes early, that's execution. But you hit some unexpected construction and you're late anyway. That's your feedback.
So tomorrow, you leave even earlier. You've updated your strategy, you've closed the loop.
A resilient organization is just that same cycle, scaled up to global complexity, with formal rigor at every single step.
So if we want to build organizations or even just personal lives that can actually handle this nonlinear world, what are the 3 big takeaways?
First, mandate objective metrics. You have to have formal rules that require using objective base rates and external data. It's the only way to fight the blind men problem. Collective data has to win out over subjective anecdotes.
Second, treat forecasting as a measurable asset. Prediction calibration has to be a real KPI for leaders. If your confidence doesn't match your accuracy, you lose credibility and you lose resources. It's a hard skill that has to be developed.
And third, engineer the environment. You have to move past this unreliable idea of willpower. You have to design and enforce active deadlines and commitment mechanisms as just a standard part of how you operate.
It's about setting up a system that structurally guarantees the right behaviors,
instead of just hoping they'll happen. And that's really the thesis we want to leave you with today, Sip&Talkers. In this fundamentally non-linear world, a world where pressing the button doesn't give you what you expect, success requires more than just smart thinking.
Right.
It requires the behavioral engineering to make sure that thinking actually translates into action at the right speed. The act of pressing the button is, in the end, irrelevant if you don't have the whole integrated ecosystem behind it to handle the chaotic results.
So here's a final thought for you to take into your week, using those inversion and systems thinking models we talked about. What system in your own life, maybe your finances, your fitness goals, your career, what system are you currently treating with a dangerously obsolete linear model? Where are you just expecting slow, gentle change when really non-linearity is building up pressure under the surface and you're about to get hit with a sudden boiling ramen catastrophe?
That's a great question to reflect on. We want to thank all of you for engaging in this conversation with us.
Please be sure to subscribe to Sip and Talk for more discussions on strategy, science, and just how to get things done in this unpredictable world.
Sure.
And check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickytolife. It has some really fun stuff on there, travel vlogs and memes.
Definitely check that out. We'll catch you next time.